Hello everyone, welcome to Shoalhaven Diamond.Sparkly's Man Cave, where we are going to do some block mounting today. So I'm just going to quickly run you through what you need for this job, the items that you'll require, so you can go off like a squirrel and collect them all up and then bring them back together into one space for you to do the block mounting. So what you'll need to begin with, you will need your diamond dot kit. Whether it has dots on or whether it has no dots, that's fine. We've got one of each here, so we'll take you through both of them. You will need a pencil of some kind, lead pencil, doesn't really matter. This is the special one that Aldi sells, but you can just use a normal mechanical pencil or whatever you've got lying around at home. You will need a knife. Be very careful with the knife, but you will need one for cutting the wood, unless you have a table saw, in which case you can cut it using that. You will need a ruler. Perhaps not one quite this big, but this is good because it's got the ability to protect your fingers when you're using the knife and cutting. So you do want to try and get a big one if you can. You won't need a pen, but I have a pen in case you might want to get a pen, just in case you want to write something on the notes, which you will have received when you purchase the video from us. So you will have a copy of this hopefully printed out, and then you can add notes to it as you go through the video. You will need a microfiber cloth of some kind. These ones come from Bunnings, usually near the checkout on your way out. They have, actually just let me spin around here and show you the packet. It looks like this. So you should be able to, it's got 4 different colours in there, and you will be able to use that endlessly for your block mounting. Okay, so you'll need your microfiber cloth, you will need a cut down part of a pool noodle. So do you know how long normally a pool noodle is? Normally it's quite a bit longer. You can cut it down with the knife if you want. So you will need one of those. And you will need some MDF board, which you can get from Bunnings. So this one's one that we've already cut to size. Usually the boards will come a little bit bigger than this. And usually that's found in the, what section is it? It's wood, next to where the doors go through to the trade area. There's an aisle there with wood in most of the Bunnings, and that's where you'll find it. So on one side it has the MDF, and on the other side it has the white melamine coating. And do we happen to have one with the sticker? Yeah, we do. Okay. This one's got the sticker still on it, so this is what you're looking for when you're looking for it. Okay. Got that? It's 3mm. There is also a 3.2mm version. Both of those are fine, doesn't matter which one you get. But we tend to work here with 3mm just to make life easier for ourselves. Okay, so what you'll also need, one last thing, you will need something heavy. Now we here in the Man Cave, we use the very large server boxes. These are actually from computers, so they're quite heavy, but you may not have that at home. Probably most people don't have that at home. I'm just lucky that we do here. You will probably use something like a very large book, and then you can pop on top of that a couple of other very large books, and that will spread the weight out across that bottom book. So you definitely want the bottom book to be the size of the kit that you're mounting if possible. All right.
If not,
oh, you can use just a standard piece of MDF. Did you just tilt the camera?
one.
Okay, so the other thing that you can use in place of a large book, if you're mounting a particularly large kit, you may want to use a big piece of actual MDF. These also come from Bunnings. This one's what, 12mm, 6mm?
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure, but
Probably go anywhere 8 upwards, usually 12 or 16.
Anywhere, say 8mm upwards. And then you pop your block mounted item underneath that, and then you can put your weights on top and make it heavy to press out any bubbles that may be in your canvas. Alright, so I think I've taken you through everything that you need to do this. Oh, I didn't mention the glue. You will want to get Selleys Quick Grip. This also is from Bunnings. It's in the glue aisle. It's about what, $19.99, $20 a can, around that. This one we probably get somewhere between, what do you think, 6 to 12, just depending on what size canvases you're doing. If you're doing large ones, obviously that's going to take up more of your glue. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get behind the camera and I'm going to hand over to the Man Cave Guru, who's going to take you through how to cut the melamine board. Alright, thanks guys, I'll catch you again soon.
Hello and welcome back. Right, stage one, first I'll show you how to measure your canvas. There's a couple of tricks with this, and you always want to make sure you make careful measurements, because if you don't cut the board size correctly, you will have problems. Various ways you can do it. When you've got a special drill like this, most special drills usually have a fairly flexible border, so you can go quite up to it without going over. Always have a good measuring device. A long steel ruler is the best way. Flexible tapes are not always accurate with their sizes, so try and get a nice long steel ruler. When you're measuring, that one is a bit better. Place the edge of the ruler up against the edge of the border. Check where your dots are. Some dots go right up the border, like in the case of this one. Other dots will be set in. If the dots is fairly well set in from the border, you can make your board size slightly smaller, and that'll prevent having any sort of white showing around the edge of the border. In this case of this one, the dots are right up against the edge, so we'll have to make sure we size it to the minimum of that. So measure your ruler up to that. Measure the size of the other ruler. So in this case here, we've got 23 centimeters. Probably a fraction under or exactly on 23 centimeters. So I'd cut that board at 23, or if you're starting out you might want to cut it a bit higher, maybe 23.2, just to give yourself a bit of flexibility in case your centering is a little bit off. As you get more used to it, more practice, you can center it better, you can bring that tightness down. So I would cut that for myself at 23. Mark that down, write it down on your paper, the measurement, so you don't forget it, and then measure the other. So again, right up to the edge of the border and measure down. So this one's 32.9 centimeters. So again, I'd probably cut that at 33.1 if you're getting used to it with a bit of flexibility, or cut it about 33 once you're getting used to it. Again, write that down. Make sure your measurements are accurate. I'll just measure twice, cut once. In this case, I'll be cutting for this one. This one's a little bit harder to measure because there's not a lot of darkness on the borders, so you have to be careful where it is, but the dots are fairly well set in from those borders. So on this case, I would cut the board slightly smaller than the borders, and that way you won't have any edges around whatsoever. When you have a full drill like this, you'll want to measure at least 1 millimeter all around. So if you're measuring across 20 centimeters, you'd want to cut your board at least 20.2, because with the full drills you do want a bit of flexibility around the outside. Otherwise, when you put your dots on afterwards, or if your dots are already on there, the dots will start running off the edge of the board and will eventually fall off. So with full drills, you do want to measure very carefully and make sure that you're cutting out slightly bigger. Alright, now if you don't have access to a bench saw, the easiest way I found to cut, and the way I used to do it initially first up, get your piece of MDF and your steel ruler and measure out your sizes. So for the B, I measured out 335, so 33.5 centimeters. Always make sure you measure off the straightest edge possible. 33.5. 33.5, and then mark that across. Once you got a nice marking there, and then we can do our cut. So again, good sharp blade. I like these type of blades because you can snap them off each section as you go to make sure you've always got a sharp blade, and the replacement blades are fairly cheap. But that whole knife is $1.99 at Bunnings, so with a blade to go with it, and packs of blade like anything from $5 to $10 for a pack of 10 or 20, depending on where you get them from. Always be careful with knives. Alright, so you measure up your steel rule. This is why we use a large steel rule, or if you want, you can use a piece of aluminium angle. Basically, you don't want your fingers right up close to where you're cutting, so a thin ruler is no good. You want a nice wide rule like this. So when you do your cutting through, obviously you're not going to cut through in one go because it is 3mm wood. So what you want to do, first one is a light score. The reason why you do a light score first up is because if you push down too hard, it has a tendency to control itself and go off your square. So you just want a very light score just to get that groove in. Once you got that groove in, you can just repeat your cuts, try not to slip. It's better to do more cuts with less pressure than push too much pressure down and try to get through too quick. Once you hear it crackling, give it a little pop up like that, just lift it up and it should just snap off. If it doesn't snap off easy, give a few more cuts and then try again. Once it's snapped off, then you're good to go. So that's one edge. Now I'll measure up and cut the second edge, which was 23.7 for this one. It's actually right on the edge, so I think I'll just sand that off rather than get cutting on the edge because that's too much, not enough to cut off. Alright, once you've done your cuts, grab a sanding. Okay, so once you've cut your board, if you're cutting with a knife or even if you're cutting it on a bench sword, you generally have where the cut edge is a bit of a flaring, depending on how clean the cut is. What I like to do is get a sanding block and give it a light sand just around the edges. And that way it takes off that edge, takes off that flare and gives it a slight curve on it. And that way when you wrap your canvas around, it is going to be nice and
out of
edgy.
focus. There we go.
Because you do want your canvas to go a nice flat roll around. If you've got a flare or edges on it, it's going to lift out and around and it's not going to stick down properly. So you do want to get a nice clean edge on that. Once you've sanded it, get a spare microfiber cloth and just wipe all the dust off of it. Once you've cut your board and cleaned it up, always put it over the job and just check visually that it's going to line up. Again, with this one, the borders are pretty light, so it's a bit hard to see. Grab this one so it's a bit easier for the camera. There's one I prepared earlier. So I place that over the board. As I said with this one, the dots go right up to the edge of the border, so I want the board to be slightly bigger. And that is pretty close to the size, just a fraction bigger, which is where I want it to be. So once you're happy that your wood is the good size, then we're ready to start gluing. Okay, so the next step we're going to do is the marking and gluing. Now the marking is quite important because when you've got your glue on and you're coming down with your glued board onto the boards, as soon as they touch, they are going to stick. So while you're coming down, the board's obscuring your view and you won't actually be able to see exactly where your print is. So you're not going to be sure if you're a little bit off, or a little bit off center. So what we do is we mark the corners. So have a look through. If you find it's difficult or it's a very light background, you may need a light board underneath it, or a white screen on a tablet or screen of some sort. But basically what we want to do is we want to see where that edge of the print is and draw a line along the edge and extended past where it goes. So the reason why we do that, so when we're coming down, that's about all you'll see. Depending on if it's a full drill, you'll be about there. If it's a partial drill, you might be able to do it about there. But that basically helps you to center on the four corners your board, so you know you're going to be exactly center to where you want to be. Otherwise you're not going to be able to see where you're going. So you want to mark all four corners, nice lines, try and keep it straight, use a ruler if you need to. And like I said, if you're having trouble seeing the print coming through, sometimes putting the whiteboard underneath it helps to show up a bit better.
Yeah, that does work on the camera much
Sometimes
better.
you want to use a light board. So whatever works best for you, every print's slightly different, and do like that. So once you mark your corners, I'm going to do 2 in a row, so that's my special drill with dots. I've also got here a full drill with no dots. So I'll mark him up as well. Try and get your prints to be as flat as possible. If they're curling up or bulging out, is going to make it a little bit more difficult. Curling up's not so bad because you can sort of rest on it as you're coming down, but you do want your canvases to be as flat as possible before you start, just to make the job that little bit easier. Alright, so stop there. Okay, so now we go on to the spraying. So go grab a can of spray, make sure you give it a good shake to make sure it's nicely mixed up. Also ensure that you have plenty of ventilation, like I've just opened the garage here so we can get a lot of airflow through. You don't want too much air blowing, but you do want ventilation because the fumes of this will be nasty. Right, so what we're going to do, the idea is basically we want to coat both surfaces. At this stage we only really want to spray where the board's going to go. And we want both surfaces to be evenly coated. You don't want too much and you definitely don't want too little. What I like to do, even sprays across the board. Make sure each line overlaps the last for a little bit, just so you get a nice even coverage. Right. So make sure you got nice even cover all the way over. Check your board, make sure there's no patches. You basically want the wood to look slightly wet. If you've gone too far, you end up getting this white frothy blotch, and that's generally too much. So you don't want to go too that far, but you do want to make sure the whole board is indeed covered with glue and looking slightly dampish. Once you've done the board, then we do the canvas. As I said, we want to spray, make sure we've got spray in that entirety of the backboard. We don't want to worry too much about the outside border at this stage. So again, nice even layer by layer. Just make sure you get that nice even coverage all over the board. Those who have been into graffiti artists and spray painting and that sort of thing should find this fairly easy. Those who haven't had much spray can before, it does take a bit of practice to get nice even coverage. Again, get your canvas and look it into the light. You should see it going slightly shiny, just looking wet. If you've got any patches that don't look wet and shiny, just give them a little bit more of a spray. But again, try not to go too far where you're going to start seeing that white frothy mess, like you've just killed a very large spider and drowned it to death in the fry spray. Which I'm sure we've always done before. Alright, once we've got a good coating on both surfaces, we set them aside and let them set. Anything from about 5 to 10 minutes, just to make the surface go tacky. You don't want to do it too soon because they won't quite stick and it will start to lift up soon after pressing down. But you don't want to leave it too long either. I like to see about 5-10 minutes. Generally I queue up a few of these to do at once because I'm fairly busy with that. So I have about 5 or 6 going at once. I'll do them all in sequence and that gives it about the right time for it to set. A good cardboard background like this, if you can get hold of it. Otherwise, just a bit of scrap wood or sheets just to catch the excess glue. And I like to pin mine up high like this, So but your can's upright, you're spraying down, cans tend to run out rather soon. You can't actually use the last bit down the bottom. So again, nice even solid sprays. Make sure you get good coverage over the entire surface. You want that wood looking wet, but don't drown it. Just like that. Alright. And the same for the canvas. Nice, thorough, even coverage over the entire surface. Some canvases are quite thirsty, so they do tend to absorb the glue quite readily, and therefore you require a bit more. Some canvases don't absorb the glue at all, and it gets very wet very quickly. So you have to experiment sometimes with different canvases and get a feel for it. But the technique's basically the same. You want enough on there to get a good stick without drowning it.
Oh.
See that?
But that shows that it doesn't stick right away, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
So
because it's not tacky
the
yet.
first 5 minutes, it's basically just wet. It's sticky, but it's not going to hold on.
Hello.
Okay, welcome back to us. Right, so we've given a bit of time for it to set. Both sides are now nice and tacky. So basically what you're going to do with this section here is you want to hover over and slowly come down close to the board. What I like to do is hold the board in the middle like that. Rest my knuckles on the outside, and that'll give you a bit of leverage to be able to hover over without touching the surface. And you want to look down onto it and look at those corners in each corner, and just try to centre them up as you're coming down and get it as centre as possible in those markings. Once you're happy with it, just pop it down till it's flat and have a look. If you've really messed it up, with a bit of effort you can peel it off. The longer you've left it, the harder it is to peel off. Most times when I'm doing it, I get, at worst case, 2 goes at pulling it off and resetting it. After that, it gets pretty sticky, and you're not going to be able to get it off. So once you've got it flat down like that, flip it over, grab your pull needle, and just like rolling out some dough, start from the centre and roll out those air bubbles. From the centre out to the edges in all the directions. If your hands are a bit arthritic and doing it like this is a bit difficult, use your forearms in the weight and just roll it out slowly. So place it on, roll it through and through again. You can do that both ways.
See how it instantly becomes more sparkly? But also this step actually polishes up your gems a little bit too, so makes them even more sparkly.
Gets them all lined up, all nicely flattened out. So once you've got all the bubbles out, what I generally like to do is just run a fingernail around the outside just to see where the canvas rolls over. Make sure it's nicely positioned and we haven't gone offline. That's pretty good there. Alright, when you've got a canvas that has dots on it already, when you're pressing it out, you want something soft to put underneath it. Yeah, that's my bit's gone. Up there. So I like to get a little bit of foam, felt, something that's nice and thick and spongy. Place it over. Make sure it's large enough to go over the entire canvas where the board is. Because the idea of this is the foam will press over those beads and press down onto the canvas itself to flatten the canvas out. Otherwise, if you just put a hard board on top of it, it's just going to press down on the beads and it's not actually going to press your canvas onto the board and flatten it out. If you've got a full drill or a canvas that hasn't got any drills on it, you can just go straight on with a hard board and then put your weights on top of that. So it's only for the dots that you need your foam.
So we probably want to put it over there, don't we? Out of our way. Yeah.
Do it like that.
When we're putting the weight on top.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, okay.
Right, so that's it. Get your foam nice and set. I like to put a piece of board. You can either use a large, spare piece of the MDF you use to cut out for it, or you can get a large piece of MDF if you want something a little bit larger. Okay, so once you've got your nice big flat board on top of your canvas to press out, get your nice big lots of weights, books or whatever, and press on top. More weight the better, without going too silly. Also make sure you've got a nice strong table underneath to take all that weight as well. Try to spread your weight out across the area, just make sure you cover that canvas completely and get all that weight down onto it. While that one's pressing out, we'll move around and do the other one.
Alright, swapsies.
Yeah, so this one's a little bit harder because it's starting to curl up on me, and it's also a long skinny one. So again, just get your fingers out there just to wrap it down. If it gets a bit too difficult, what you can do, a couple more bits of MDF. I usually keep a lot of scraps laying around from previous offcuts, and just anchor out the outside. If you're using MDF like this, make sure you put that side down, because that side isn't as sticky and it's not going to stick to your overspray. Like that. Now our canvas is sitting down nice and happy. So again, sticky to sticky. Let's come down onto it. Now this is a full drill, so my board's going to be slightly larger than the print area. We have quite enough room there, so I'll move that out a bit. Yeah, that's better. Right. Check all four corners, make sure we're nice and centered, and drop down onto that board. Take these away, flip them over. Again. And just want to check that. Alright, so that's where I'm rolling over, so just outside the range of the drills, and that's just about perfect. So I'll make sure that's good all the way around. So here I'm right on the edge, so anything less than that, you want to redo it, because your dots are going to roll off. That's looking pretty good to me. A little bit over that side, but still well within. Yep, that's good to me. Alright, pull needle, roll out. If you find that you've got creases in your cellophane or paper like that, what you want to do is lift it up and holding it up, bring in with your pull needle and slowly flatten it down and help get some of those creases out. So that way when you press it out, you're not pressing creases into the glue. Alright, once it's nice and flat, a flat piece of board, place it on top. Because this one doesn't have dots, I don't have to worry about foam. And we get our nice heavy weight and drop it on top. And that is stage one complete. We'll be back later. I like to let them press out overnight. Minimum is probably about an hour. That's what I do in classes, but generally here I leave it for a couple of hours or let it press out overnight and then come back and do stage two. So see you back soon with stage two. Okay, welcome back. Now we do stage two. So we take our weights off our board. That looks fairly well pressed out. So as I said before, with partial drills, you'll need the foam to press into those spaces that don't have drills. If you just put something hard on top, you're not going to be able to pressing out that canvas, and you will have lumps and curves. Even still, if there's a lot of creases, like this one has quite a few creases in it, sometimes you do still have some areas. If you have some areas that haven't quite stuck down flat, just the back of your nail or a guitar pick or a plastic straightener, for your dots, and just give a bit of a rub where those creases are, just to flatten it out. At this stage it's been sitting for a while, the glue's very, very sticky underneath there, so it only needs a couple of presses to get them to stay down. Alright, we're good with that?
Yep.
Now we go over here. Hit it up
Oh,
again.
look, it's my car. We'll go out this way.
Alright. So now in this stage, what you want to do is you want to spray glue that whole canvas that's sticking out and an equal amount of the white melamine behind it. So it's about 1.5 inches there, 1.5 inches in there. Because again, when we roll it over and flatten it out, you want the two sides to be sticky to stick together. Make sure you aim down to get a good amount of glue into that gap there. That's the edge that's going to have the hardest time to stick. Again, just check that canvas is nice and wet, or damp I should say, all the way over. And you have covered that section of white melamine where it's going to overlap substantially.
And it doesn't matter if you go over that because we're going to wipe that off when we're done, right? Yeah.
If you go too far over, it's just going to get messy when you're doing your work, as I'll show you if we're on. So again, put that aside for 5-10 minutes to go tacky. While it's going tacky, I'll do the next one. So this one's going to be a little bit more difficult to work on because there isn't much there.
It's not as thick.
So there's not a lot to go over.
There's some, but
some of them are quite thin.
we've had really super small ones before, which are very hard to do. And in that case, you might use a little bit of super glue just to press down the...
Yeah.
So I see that you put that there. Is there a reason that you put that there on when you're doing this?
So I clamp on the corners because we don't. That's the bit we're going to cut out further on down the tracks. We actually don't need to put glue in those very corners.
Yeah.
We'll actually cut that corner out as we go.
So it doesn't
So we
matter
don't get
then.
a lump in the canvas.
Good plan.
I'll show you that when we get to it. One advantage of the such thin tails is it's going to require less glue. Again, set that aside 5-10 minutes, go nice and tacky.
Okay. Now, well, we want to show them when we know that it's not ready, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it won't be ready now for sure. All right. So we'll just quickly do that.
If you come into it soon. So when we're folding over, what I like to do is you have a look at your design, see where your legend is. If you've got the dots already on, this is not so critical, but I like to get me in the practice anyway, regardless of dots or no dots. If your dots aren't on, you want to be able to see that legend afterwards. If you're in doubt, take a photo just in case you do lose it. But what I'll generally do is I'll wrap over the top and bottom first and leave the sides that have the legend on it. Then when you wrap over the legend, that will overlap and you'll still be able to read it. So when you're ready to do the wrap over, this is why we don't put glue right in the centre, because you'll need to press fairly firmly on there and you don't want to come away with all your glue. With the edge of your nail, your finger, run it along the edge and get a nice hard curve. If it's a full drill, you will have a little bit of difficulty. You have to be careful working around the drills that are already on there. If there's no drills on there, make sure your cellophane is between you. That way you're not pressing along where the glue is.
Yeah. So you see how it's not standing up? That means it's not ready.
It's almost there, but it's starting to sort of fall down, so it's not quite tacky yet.
So we'll come back when it's ready.
Yep.
All right. Back.
Okay, so put our glue on the edges. You'll need to have handy your knife and your microfiber cloth. Don't get attached to this, it will be destroyed by the end of it. So, what I like to do is put my hand in the middle where there isn't any glue. If you have too much overspray, you'll get a bit sticky, but that's right, that glue comes off your skin pretty easily. Hang it over the edge of the table, because what you want to do is press along that edge and get a nice sharp crease. So see how that's standing up nice and straight now and staying there? That means the glue is nice and set and ready to go. So we work that edge over. Don't try to come over straight away, because if you just peel it over and flatten it down, that canvas will be curved and it won't be properly stuck to that spine. And we'll have an air gap in there, and then it will eventually creep away and it will start to bubble out and lose its grip. And then the whole thing will start to come unraveled. So what I like to do is make sure you get a nice hard edge along there, press that up right against the board, and then start working on your second crease and get that over nice and flat. So hard up against the board as it goes over. Once you got at that stage, bring it back to the table like that, and I like to just use my thumb, a bit of pressure, and spread that out. So what you're doing here is you're also pulling the canvas away from the edge, making sure there's no slackness in there whatsoever, and getting it nice and flat all along that edge there. Once you've done that, spin it around and do the other end. So nice hard crease, make sure it gets right up against that wood and follows the wood around. Holds up nice and well, it's nice and tacky, you can proceed. If it's not, if it starts to fall down, it's not tacky enough, give it some more time for the glue to set.
Is it possible that one end can be ready and the other end can't be?
If you've got a bit too thick in the glue, it will take longer to go tacky and you'll need to give it more time. If you've got a bit thin, it gets tacky fairly quickly. If you haven't got enough glue at all, then it won't ever get tacky, in which case you'll have to peel it off and spray it again.
Yeah.
It does take a bit of practice sometimes, but it's better to have sometimes too much glue than not enough glue. Too much just means it's going to take longer to set. Not enough glue means it'll never set properly. Alright, so we've done top and bottom. We've still got our legend visible there. Now we cut the corners. So make sure your blade is nice and sharp. If it's one of these blades, do a regular snap off so you've always got a sharp edge there. And what you want to do is...
I'm going to come in real close for this.
Try not to, when you're pressing down the edges, stick them together. If you've got them up like that, otherwise peel it off and get it through. So what you want to do is you want to bring the blade along where the wood is. Don't go too deep because you do not want to cut through the other side. All you want to do is cut along here and just cut this one layer here. If you're too deep, you'll cut through the other side and that can be seen afterwards. So as always, don't cut towards your fingers, always keep yourself away from where the knife's going. So just run the blade along that edge of that wood, through the canvas to the edge there, so it folds back. Don't keep cutting because you'll end up getting an edge on it. Once you've got it there, then you get your blade, and you want to give it a slight inward cut like that, not out like that, not dead straight, and you don't want to go too far in. Too far in, and you won't have enough to stick down. So you want just a slight angle like that. Just like that. And those bits can go somewhere and eventually end up in the bin. And repeat all the way around.
So is it easier to do one side first? Does it matter?
No, whatever's easier. There's no set way for that. Whatever's easier to routine. I usually do the two ends, then cut the two ends. If you've got a board that you can cut on, you can do it straight across like that. And that can help you give a slightly easier, straighter cut. If you've got a table that you don't want to cut on, either get a scrap piece of MDF so you can cut it, or just hang it over the edge like I do here. So again, knife blade on the edge of the wood, and just carefully slide it along the wood, and just don't go too deep so you're cutting through the other side. You just want just enough to cut through that one layer. Grab your knife and cut that edge off. Do it from this angle so you can see it better. So just along there, just deep enough to cut through that first layer, get it flat, and cut at a slight angle, just like that. Once you've done all four corners, spin it around and start working on the long edges. So the same trick, nice hard crease along one edge, make sure it's nice and flat along the edge, and then start working on your second edge. And as you can see, doing it this way, that legend is there, still nice and visible for if we had one that didn't have the dots on yet, we could still use that legend and still read it through.
Alright, we're back again. Yep.
Okay, so final edge, get it through, nice hard crease on the edges, second crease, press it down, flatten it all out. Once you've done that, we grab our microfiber cloth and we wipe off the excess spray glue. You can see there, it's just coming off. This white melamine's almost like Teflon, very easy to wipe.
So how come the canvas sticks to it?
Because we've gotten two surfaces of glue.
It's not actually sticking to the melamine, it's sticking to the glue.
Sticking to the glue.
Yeah.
It will stick to the melamine when you've got two surfaces sticking together that have both got glue on it. With this spray glue, if you glue one side and then stick it together, it's a semi-permanent grip. If you glue both sides and stick it together, it's a permanent grip.
Yeah.
So because this hasn't got anything else stuck to it, that one side is only a semi-permanent grip and it will come off. So keep using fresh parts of your microfiber cloth as you work your way around, cleaning that glue off. Like I said, it doesn't take long for the microfiber cloth to get full of glue, especially if you've got a big unitly overspray. Once you've got it all off,
So let's see what that looks like now.
clean section and just go right around it. Get all that excess glue off the melamine. When you're doing it, be careful around the edges that you don't start peeling off the canvas. I generally run along the edge of the canvas like that. And now we're done. And that is your finished product. Again, we will want to put that under pressure and flatten it out just like before. Preferably overnight, just to make sure that glue sets.
So we do have a little white line here, which is going to drive you batshit crazy, is it not?
Sometimes.
I said I almost swear.
So if you've got an edge like that, what you can do is use a bit of paint or a texture, permanent marker, something that's going to be the same colour as the background, and just colour that white in. Some people like the white edge around it, some people will deliberately put the white edge around to have a bit of a border. That's fine too. If your border's not quite so even, or you want to get rid of it, just a little bit of colouring in or texture, make sure the colour's matched, and you can just black that out.
Yeah, so that one you use a black Sharpie, yeah?
Black or very dark brown.
Yeah.
It's actually a dark brown, I think, on this one here, but yeah, either would work with that sort of background, just to hide it away.
Awesome.
So again, because it's got the dots on it and it's a special drill, cover it with foam, put some nice heavy weight on it.
Alright, we did that one.
Come back with the other one.
Yep.
Okay, so we're back now with our full drill. This one doesn't have a dot, so we do want to try and save our legend there. But if in doubt, take a photo of it and keep it for later. Right. Again, we want to do our ends first. Now this hasn't got dots on it. It has still got the cellophane, or in this case the white protective. So I'll actually use that. Again, pressure in the middle where there's no spray glue. This canvas is a little bit thicker, especially with this stuff on it, so you want a fair bit of pressure. Nice hard crease. Remember, one crease first, get it nice and flat. Make sure it's staying up like it is. That means your glue's set and ready to go. If it just falls down, give it some more time to set.
Is it harder with the paper and the cellophane on to do this?
With this type of paper, it does make it a little bit harder because that's quite thick and it's going to add to the pressure wanting to get itself flat again. So you will have to add a bit more pressure to get that crease to fold and to stay there. Some of them have the sticky bit exposed and you'll be running along that sticky bit. Like this one here has got quite a bit of extra sticky on it. So if that cellophane's not there, you'll be running along your finger along that sticky, and that makes it getting that edge quite a bit more difficult as well. So every canvas is slightly different. This one's not so bad because this stuff here actually does match the sticky, so you can just run your finger on that protective paper and you're not running your finger along the sticky. With the cellophane ones, sometimes you can do it, sometimes the sticky's over, in which case just make sure that cellophane's there and carefully run along the cellophane and get that edge through. I generally like to start in the middle and run along the outside, start in the middle, run along the outside, and just gradually work it over. Never rush. Once you've got it flat like that, again, we do our little press out, get it nice and flat. You can see that paper's trying to get itself to go flat again. It probably will eventually, but we'll keep it down for now. Alright, so one end first, spin it round, second end. Nice hard edge, one crease first, and then we start working on the second crease. Get it flat, press it out.
How many of these do you think you've done now?
I don't want to know. Reservedly, I'll probably say about 50.
Yeah, I'd say that many, at least.
Now, it's just like before, we just cut out the corners. Sometimes you like to cut the two edges first, and then you'll cut out the corners. When you haven't got the dots on straight away, you will want to be slightly careful how much of an angle you put on these cuts. The reason why is because where your legend is, this one's not so bad because the legend's well and truly, but some of them, the legend will go right up to there. So if you cut too much of an angle, you're actually going to cut part of the legends off. So sometimes it's good just to check where the legend is. Make sure you're not cutting too much off. I like to put just a very slight angle on that cut, just enough so it doesn't overlap when we fold it over, but not too much that it's going to cut away any legend that might be underneath. Some canvases are good, they've got a legend on both sides, in which case, if you do accidentally cut a little bit of legend off, you can refer to the other one to get the information. Alright, so once that's done, now we do the long edge. So again, if you've got cellophane, I'd start in the middle and work your way out. Ones like these, not so critical, but sometimes it's a good practice anyway. Just from the middle, out. Slowly work it over, make sure you get that nice sharp creases.
So this one's actually part of a 5-panel set, right?
Yeah, so this is the middle panel of a 5-panel. So there's two smaller panels either side, and then 2 smaller panels again on the other side. So that's why this one's so tall and skinny. Another thing to remember when you're going like this, don't go too fast because you will get friction burn, and that can be quite painful. Some canvases you can slip along quite quickly, other canvases you've got to actually go quite slowly, otherwise you will get that friction burn. Trust me, it
the
hurts.
diamond dots ones are the worst for the friction
Yep,
burn,
they
we've
are.
discovered, because they the canvas on those is really thick compared to this kind of canvas, so
And they've got a lot of texture to them, so they do cause a lot of friction.
So just be careful when you're doing those, because you don't want to end up with burns as a surprise to yourself. So there's usually 2 outcomes of doing this course. One of them is you go off into the sunset, happily block mounting all your kits forever. And that's the best option. That's the number 1 choice. But the other one is you go, oh, that's all too hard, let Raiden do it for me.
That keeps me busy.
The more people that do that, the longer the queue gets. So preferably go with the first option. But if you want Raiden, he can always do a block mount for you. It just might take 2, 3, 4 weeks, depending on what he's got going on. Because, you know, he is studying uni. He is, well, he's
Taking
doing
care of business, plus working a spare time job.
Yeah, he's doing many
Doing lots of
things.
things.
So he normally Saturdays and Sundays are his block mounting days. He would prefer to have an actual day off, but he rarely gets one. So if you can block mount your own things, that will be awesome.
And remember, don't expect to be perfect on your first try. It does take several goes to get used to this. My first one wasn't quite so good, and I've had a few failures over the time. You just got to keep trying. The more you do, the better you get at it. Alright, so that's all done, nice and clean. Now these 2 are both fairly small, so I'm going to cover them both and put them under one. Don't need foam for this one, but it's just about the size of the other one. Yeah, nice heavy weight. And they're done. So let them press out overnight. Once they're done, peel them off. When you do unpack it the next morning, especially with these full drill ones with the glue that goes right over the edge, be careful lifting them up because that's going to stick to the board. So you want to lift it up carefully, Otherwise the stickiness might actually start pulling off the canvas. You want to be careful with peeling that up, but it hasn't stuck itself down too hard. Just grab the under the corner and just slowly edge it up until that glue's free. Once it's free, you can lift it up and you're free to move on to the next stage, which is either do your dotting in this case, or hang it up on your wall in this case.
That is the sparkly owl, which is in stock at the moment. Comes and goes. Really beautiful design. Very, very pretty. Alright, so that's it from us guys with the block mounting. We may come back for a small wrap-up video. We'll see how that goes. Bye for now. Hi everyone, so just a final wrap up. First of all, obviously, you may have guessed from my accent, I'm Australian, so we're in Australia. So where I've talked about Bunnings and where I've talked about products that are available in Australia, if you're viewing this from another place in the world, you may not have access to those same things, because definitely Bunnings is only Australia. In America, it would be somewhere like Lowe's perhaps. I don't know what they call the hardware stores in the UK or the Europe or places like that, so you might just want to go to your local hardware store. You could take your notes with you and you could say, can you tell me what this would be? White line MDF board 3mm thick, it's at the top there, and the spray adhesive Selleys Quick Grip. I think Selleys is an Australian company too, so you may not be able to get that elsewhere. But you do want something that has a really good grip on both sides. So just have a chat with your hardware professional about that. Sorry, what?
Don't skimp.
Don't skimp. Yes, never skimp with your glue. You definitely want to use more.
You go cheap, you get cheap.
And don't buy cheap glue, because if you buy cheap glue, what will happen is over time, your canvas and your board will slowly come apart. And that won't be a good look for you or for your finished product. So I also wanted to say, we did give you some notes. If you didn't get a copy of these, contact me and let me know. We think we've covered everything in here, all the questions that you might have. But if you have questions, you're not going to be the only one that has that question. So please make sure you send me the question. I can add it to the next set of notes, and that way everyone will know what's happening. It will be much better. We will be able to improve if you give us that feedback. If there was anything in the video that was unclear or you're not sure how to do it, please also let me know, because we will be able to improve it. We are out here block mounting almost every week, so I can always add extra content if needed. Preferably we'd rather not, but if we have to, we will. I don't know, is there anything else I have to let them know, Braden? Braden's shaking his head. Okay. I think that's probably it from us for today. There may be extra bonus parts added on at a later time, but in the meantime, I will say happy dotting and jazz hands. Thanks for watching this video, guys. Bye-bye. Hello, dotters. Just a little bit of bonus content for you. We've got two very large kits here on the table that we're just going to block mount. So, we're going to do it together, because when you've got big ones, it's better to have helping eyes.
Again, just like before, just got to try and centre it as best you can. One person will centre the one end, the other person will centre the other end.
This is the same thing that happens every time. I think we're way off, and he comes around and says, no, it's fine. No, it's fine.
A little bit, but you'll be right. Should be right.
So pop it down?
Yep.
Alright.
Always flip it over and check your edges to see how close you are.
Way up? Yeah. Alright, so now we have to pull it up. And we may not be able to. It's been super tricky. Oh, holy really? Okay, let's go again. So, bonus content for sure. Alright, now.
Hold it above.
Alright, that seems centered on mine, but did you make this over or not?
Should be just over.
Okay, well I'm actually almost perfect.
Here we go.
Fingers crossed this time. dry on that edge as well. It's okay. Yeah, that'll be. So don't ever expect that you're going to get it perfect on these bigger ones, because
It's take lots of practice and lots of goes, and
it's just not possible to do every time.
sometimes you have to make the backboard quite a bit larger in order to allow for that.
So
That's why I made this board just slightly too small, making it very careful to the edge.
if the board is a little bit bigger and you need to cover the white, there's lots of different ways you can do that. You can use washi tape, you can use paint, there's lots of different ways to cover up any white that may be there on the edges.
And in the end, that's actually turned out to be pretty perfect.
Oh, good work. We did good.
Yeah,
Yay.
lucky.
So now we're just polishing up the gems on nice like.
Getting all those bubbles out from underneath the canvas.
Making it as perfect as we can. And then we'll pop this under some heavy servers, get some pressure on it. But we actually have another one we've got to do as well. And how are we going to do that if you put that there? So I think we'll
I'm
want
just
to
going to
do.
put this aside for the time being.
Yeah.
We'll flatten it out in a minute.
Okay.
Flatten them out together by sandwiching.
This one
This one is quite a bit
is
bigger.
a really big one. This is a 60 by 80. So it's huge. Huge. This is actually our own kit. It's one of our artist designs that I commissioned, and I've had one of my ladies, Coral, has dotted it for me. I think it took her about 4 weeks, which is pretty quick for such a big one. And now we're block mounting it to go on display. Uh-oh.
And she's already messed it up.
I've already messed it up.
Right,
Yeah.
lift your hand up high. I just want to check the sizing.
Now you messed it up. Now we're equals.
Yeah, so it's going to be difficult because the board's also a bit flexy.
Right. So are we over on this one or?
This one you should be just over. Actually.
There's a crap flying creature.
Extra bonus content.
Extra bonus content.
Alright, lift yours up higher. I'll get mine down and we'll try and centre yours as it comes
Alright.
down.
So when you've got a second person, it is good to have extra eyes.
Got the canvas and give it a pull. Just give the canvas nice and tight. Close we are.
Well, I don't really care if it's not perfect because it's ours.
I do.
Braden is a perfectionist. If you're a perfectionist, this is going to be really hard for you because nothing is ever perfect. Good enough is close enough for me, but he likes it to be spot on. And he's going to say, nope, no good. Are you going to say that? What are you going to say?
Pretty close.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I think it's awesome.
Did leave a little bit extra on this one because it is so huge.
Alright, maybe we should get 2 pool noodles.
Good idea.
Yeah,
Why do I have to do all the work?
pool noodles akimbo. Was I in your way? I'm terribly sorry. So sometimes you might have a dot that pops out of where it's supposed to be, or
You'll discover that while you're flattening out that you've missed a dot.
yeah, or you might have a whole line that has suddenly popped out of place. Some of these might have. So you may need to go back afterwards and just slightly adjust where they are. Sometimes they move
Flattening out
slightly.
process, it'll also flatten them out and push them back into place.
That one has got a missing dot there. Yeah, I see. Keep missing books. It's okay, I'll fix that up at a later time. I have to get this. I think I've actually got all the spare dots. Cole gave them to me, so I'll be able to fix that up. Oh yeah. It's a very lovely design. Look at all the colours. Alright, so we're going to put them both under some weight now. But we're going to have to think about where we're going to put it because we are coming back to do the second part of the other ones. So we want to make sure we're not going to be in the way of the filming for later.
So a board at canvas this size is going to require a fairly large board to cover.
So you want to put a big one on top of it if you can.
Is my board large enough? I think it's just big enough.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same size as the actual canvas actually.
Good work.
Lucky what?
And we're going to whack some really heavy weights. Will we put the wolves on top of that?
Yeah, we'll sandwich them. So
We will sandwich, so you can put them on top of each other.
If you're using thick boards like this, you can put them on top and save your space by sandwiching them all together. So if you've done quite a few, I sometimes will spread out across the board, put another board on top and sandwich them all together under one heavy weight. But, a board on top.
So because this is a full drill and not a special drill, it's okay to put, you don't need the foam on top, because the dots are already on these ones.
Because it's a full drill, you've got no canvas exposed to press down, so even weight across all the dots are going to press evenly across the whole canvas and still press it out. It's only the partial drills that have the big gaps, they're the ones you need the foam for. Especially the ones with all different types of dots on them.
Yeah,
big
different
dots, little
heights.
dots,
Yeah,
that's the ones you need the foam on.
Well, I
Right.
think we did that job.
That is under weights and pressing out. Now we'll cut and go to stage 2 of the other ones.
All right.